Good morning. I'm State Representative Jennifer Santalitro, and the people I represent in Northern DuPage and Northwest Cook counties tell me all the time they feel like it's getting more expensive just to live in Illinois. And I can say with certainty, they are not just imagining it. Property taxes are higher than they've ever been. Actually, property taxes here in Illinois are the highest in the country. That, along with unexpected fees around every single corner, families are being asked to do more with less. And when headlines come out of Springfield, the first question people ask is, how is this going to affect me and where I live? Well, Governor Pritzker is proposing another cut to the Local Government Distributive Fund. This is about $60 million that will be taken away from cities and counties across Illinois. It's money every Illinois community uses for police and fire protection, fixing roads, and keeping basic essential services running. When that funding gets cut, local leaders don't have a lot of options for alternative revenue. They either raise property taxes, increase fees, or cut services, none of which are good outcomes for working families or businesses. The bottom line is that the governor wanting to cut these LGDF funds from local governments will make it harder for communities to manage costs and potentially force them to raise property taxes as a result. Working families are already stretched very thin. The governor must fully fund the LGDF, give municipalities the resources they need, and help prevent raising property taxes for families in this process. Thank you, and with that, I turn it over to Rep. Laha.
Thank you, Representative Santalitro. Good morning. I'm Nicole Laha, and I represent House District 82, which encompasses a large portion of Cook and DuPage County and a smaller portion of Will County. What we're talking about today and what we've been talking about is not only extremely concerning to the 3 counties that I represent, but to all 102 throughout the state. Property taxes continue to rise, and working families are feeling the pressure in real, immediate ways. An analysis by the Cook County Treasurer's Office found that nearly $2 billion in property tax burden shifted onto homeowners over a 3-year period. During that same time, business property tax bills dropped by $3.3 billion, while residential bills increased by $1.9 billion. In Cook County, the median property tax is roughly $6,300, with an effective rate near 2.1%. On top of this, it seems though Cook County can't even get their bills out on time, causing more uncertainty for families who are choosing to plan. In DuPage County, the median bill often exceeds $7,500, with similarly high effective rates. In Will County, families are also seeing some of the highest effective property tax rates in the region, often around or above 2%. These families have done everything right, and they're still being squeezed. For many households, that means paying thousands of dollars each year to simply remain in their homes. In some of the hardest hit areas, about 10% of homeowners were only able to make partial payments on their property tax bills. That trend points to real financial strain. As property taxes continue to climb, households are forced to make very difficult decisions while managing rising costs in every part of their lives. Illinois has the highest property taxes in the nation, with homeowners paying roughly double the national average wage. When that reality combines with sharp increases and shifting burdens, that impact becomes unsustainable for many of us. Working families are doing their part. They plan carefully, they make sacrifices. They stay committed to their communities. They deserve a system that reflects consistency, transparency, and fairness. So where do we go from here? We start by bringing transparency back to the process. Taxpayers should be able to clearly see how their assessments are calculated and how appeals are decided. We focus on balance. Any reform must ensure that relief for one group does not quietly shift the burden onto another. We must look at ways to create stability and predictability in this system, so families are not hit with sudden spikes year after year without warning. Finally, we need to grow. As families and businesses leave Illinois, the property tax burden shifts onto everyone else who chooses to stay. Growth brings prosperity, jobs, and it relieves the burden on all of our families. Stability matters. Predictability matters. Fairness matters. And pro-growth policies absolutely matter. Families are simply asking for a system they can understand, a system they can plan around, and a system that allows them to stay in the homes they work so hard to build. That is the standard we should be working towards, and it is one that we need to take extremely seriously right now. Thank you so much, and with that, I pass it on to Representative Ugasti.
Thank you, Nicole. State Representative Dan Ugasti, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming today. From the 65th District, parts of Kane and DuPage County. So I've been here for 8 years, and so is the governor. And finally, he's ready to acknowledge there's a property tax problem here in Illinois. And we're glad to have him on board. We're glad that he's joining us in acknowledging there's a problem. And it seems the Senate President's ready to be there, as well as the Speaker of the House, and the House Democrat caucus is ready to join in as well. So what does that mean? What does property tax reform and relief look like in Illinois? Well, the governor's initial remarks seem to place it onto local taxing districts and saying, well, they set the prices, so they're the problem. And while that may be accurate, we have the controls. Local governments can't do anything more than what we as a state allow them to do. So we have the ability to rein it in, and there's other things we can do to bring about property tax relief. The House Democrats, well, we've seen their first attempt, and it needs some work. We can all acknowledge that. So it's important when addressing this issue to remember one thing, because if we're going to get a good resolution, we need to have people who are serious about property tax relief at the table. So let's remember how we got here, how we now have the governor, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and many other Democrats acknowledging there's a property tax problem in this state. House Republicans under the leadership of Tony McCombie brought this to the forefront, put the issue out there, whether it was our talk in committees, whether it was the multiple press conferences we've held, or whether it was the Property Tax Relief Conference's letter saying we need this to happen as part of the mega project bill. That's what has brought this to the forefront. That's what has us talking about this very issue. So where does this leave us? What are we going to do? Well, let's look at what we have. We brought this out there. We wouldn't be here without us, so bring us to the table. We need to be present. We need to be talking with you because, as has been mentioned, we have bills that will bring actual results. HB 9, which I've mentioned multiple times, I'm not going to go into the details, would have provided $3.5 billion of property tax relief throughout all of Illinois this past year. Or maybe we should just institute a cap like Indiana did. We'll have to see, but there are solutions. With this, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Kiker.
Good morning, all. I'm State Representative Jeff Kiker. I represent parts of Kane, DeKalb, and McHenry counties. As my colleagues have spelled out, crushing property taxes are driving small businesses and families and opportunities out of the state of Illinois. Wherever I go in my district, and I know I hear this from my peers on both sides of the aisle, whether it's a coffee shop in Sycamore or a small business in Hampshire, or talking with families at community events, one of the top issues and concerns that I consistently hear about is property taxation in the state of Illinois, and that they are just entirely too high. We have some of the highest property taxes in the nation. If you look, there was a Wall Street Journal that was published, it was either over the weekend or Monday, that went into a national narrative on that as well. And it's hitting people at every stage of life. As the article points out, young families trying to buy their first home are oftentimes pushed out of the ability to do that. Working parents trying to make their ends meet, they can't. Seniors on fixed incomes are being priced out of where they've called home for 40, 50, 60 years because of the increase in the property taxes. The reality is property taxes don't just show up on a bill once a year, twice a year, they shape major life decisions. They determine whether someone stays in Illinois or leaves, whether a business expands here or goes somewhere else, whether a retiree can age in place or is forced to move. And frankly, too many people feel like they have no say in the process as it stands today. That's something we are here to change. For years, House Republicans have called for relief and an end to costly mandates coming down from state governments. You saw many of them at the House bill deadline reading, and they are just small nickel and dime mandates that we're forcing governments to comply with, that's forcing costs onto our local units of government. If the state is putting this much time and effort into offering tax relief for large corporations, then there is no reason why we can't do it for everyday Illinoisans. House Republicans have a property tax relief agenda, and we need to act. As Leader Ugasti mentioned, his House Bill 9 is one of several solutions we believe could have profound impact on taxpayers. I personally have introduced 2 TIF bills for TIF reform that would trigger a referendum under House Bill 1142 and removing the TIF extension to 47 years under House Bill 1222. We also have House Bills 5611 and 5612, and these proposals would reinvest funds from paid-off bonds back into lowering property taxes through an education property tax relief fund, instead of allowing that revenue to be quietly redirected elsewhere. It's a simple idea that when we pay our debts off, the taxpayer should benefit. House Bill 2543 would improve transparency and empower residents by requiring taxing bodies to go directly to the voters to approve before increasing property taxes. That restores a fundamental principle. Government works for the people, not the other way around. House Bill 1024, which would create the Prohibition of Closed Door Tax Increases Act, brings much needed transparency by requiring local governments not to increase a levied tax and must include sunset provisions on tax referendum questions. Taxes shouldn't last forever without a review. This ensures tax questions come back before the voters where they certainly belong. And House Bill 5550. It strengthens the truth in taxation laws so that families get a clearer, earlier notice when their property taxes could go up. No more surprises, just transparency and accountability. Now, none of these ideas are radical. In fact, they're rooted in something very basic: respect for the property taxpayers in the state of Illinois. We can once again make our state where families and businesses want to be, noting that affordability and prosperity is available in the state of Illinois. Now is the time to act, and that's what House Republicans are calling on to be done. We'll now open it up for questions.
On LGDF, it was mentioned obviously local governments don't quite have a whole lot of authority to raise their own funding. Brandon Johnson's going to be here tomorrow. He wants obviously the full LGDF funding, but he also wants more power to raise his own revenue at the local level. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think when we look at LGDF, and I'll let my peers answer then as well, it's a decades-long broken promise when we go back to what was a 2011, 2012 tax increase. Just because our expenses went up doesn't mean that local governments haven't. And for us to walk away from the 10% share that was misinterpreted to put us in the current position, we're now talking about going down significantly. And that represents the dollars for that city portion of our tax bills that are going to need to increase to cover that shortfall. Local governments are under the same cost pressures as the state, and the state should have honored its obligation. And I think, Ben, this is one of the fundamental distrusts that Illinoisans put in state government. We violated our promise to local governments that we were going to share in allowance for this new tax structure. We broke our promise, and we need to step up to the plate, and we need to be honorable in getting that to the 10%. Now, where's that money come from? There are plenty of projects that we've put into place that have very little accountability. We can look at the violence interruption grant. We can look at some of the other grants that have gone to local community organizations that we could certainly alter where that revenue is coming from and where it's going to help with our local governments. Anybody else have a comment that they want to share? Okay.
While you all voted against the Bears Mega Project bill that moved forward out of the House, and we all know that needs some work, we got an answer today of how much property tax are we actually seeing, and frankly, it's kind of embarrassing, under $2 per average household. What truly could be done if you're brought to the table? Could real tax relief come to our homeowners? Like, what are we talking, more than $5?
Yeah, let me share a story and then I'll let my peers go, because this is the balance that Republicans have always sought to strike. We are in a hole so deep we need to stop digging. The only way out of the tax mess that we find ourselves in today is to grow our economy, to diversify our tax base. In 2019, I was one of the Republicans that supported the package that allowed the data center incentive to be introduced. I did that because at the time I represented the city of DeKalb. What the city of DeKalb has realized over time, over the last 5 cycles, and I haven't yet seen 2025, but from 2019 to 2024, the levy rate in the city of DeKalb has gone from 11.7% to 7.9%. If anybody wants to see the charts, I'm happy to share it with you. It has also seen a net benefit last year alone of $30 million to the taxing bodies in the city of DeKalb after abatement. And this is based strictly off the data center that's partially built that Meta has established in the city of DeKalb. And data centers working with local businesses on this agreement are what have gotten us here. The benefits that I see in DeKalb come from having an enterprise zone structure and allowing that abatement structure to work. The school district has just opened a brand new elementary school in its most high-need, high-demand neighborhood. They wrote a check. They didn't have to go to referendum. Imagine if we have multi-million-dollar corporations choosing to come to Illinois, hire people, contribute to our tax base in a fair and equitable way that protects the residents, like we've seen in DeKalb. We are going to have a state where people are flocking to, because Illinois has so many basic ways that we are the greatest state in the country. Texas is the one that we don't. So if we can fix this, we're on a headwind, tailwind to success that will be unrivaled in this country. Somebody else?
I was one of the Republicans out of the 10 Republicans that did vote for the mega project bill. I voted for that bill because Illinois is starved for economic development, growth, jobs, and I feel like this bill brings all of that. I'm going to be watching the Senate closely with the amendment, and we'll make sure that the property taxpayers are protected in that bill. But everything that I do when I'm down here is about jobs and growth and how we're going to bring back money to the people of this state so that they can be protected and they don't have to keep paying high property taxes.
And kind of piggybacking off of Representative Sanalitro, those two things can exist in the same space. We can see growth and economic growth and protections and provisions. And I'm with her on that. Watching the Senate and the language that's added to that, it's going to be huge to see where this goes in the future.
Just quickly, you asked the question, what would that look like? I told you, HB 9, which is very realistic and can be done, has $3.5 billion this past year. It would have provided property tax relief. Over 21 years, $82.4 billion. And then the savings really start. Truly, there's more to it than this. So things are out there. They can be done. We can do stop the bond rollovers. We can insist that local taxing bodies can only keep so much in reserves. We have all these bills there. They're real, and they will provide property tax relief for taxpayers in the state if we're brought to the table, if we can talk about them, and if they're actually considered and then put in place. But we know we need their help. They have the votes.
So on the mega project bill, a lot of that property tax relief directly relates to what would come from mega project, these payments that the mega projects would pay. You're proposing a lot of stuff that sounds independent of that. I guess, is that the preference, to have more of these independent things like HB 9 rather than tying property tax relief to a mega project?
Absolutely. Look, we want property tax relief wherever we can get it. But it's sort of counterintuitive to do it that way, because now you're saying, well, we're competing with other states to get these projects, so we're going to put this plan in place. But oh, by the way, whatever agreement you cut with the local taxing bodies, you're going to have to double it because we want to provide property tax relief to everyone else. You know what? Let's just start providing property tax relief. And as we grow our tax base, it's automatically going to force it down, as Representative Kiker was saying. It's a win-win situation all the way around. And it's something that I wish 8 years ago this administration and House Democrats and Republicans would have jumped on when we started that property tax commission back in 2019 that had 100 members. But unfortunately, they didn't. But we're here now. Let's do it now. Let's get it moving forward. House Republicans brought this forward. We have bills. We have answers. It's time to get it moving.
Let me contribute to that too a little bit. You know, Ben, one of the biggest problems that we have right now is folks come to us and they say, all right, what's that one solution to property taxes? Or what's your solution? The problem that we have with property taxes in the state of Illinois is the compounding effect of all of the years of changes, limitations, and requirements that we have placed on local units of government of all shapes and sizes. The solutions need to start with dismantling what those cost pressures are, right? And it's not a one-size-fits-all. There is a holistic menu of items that we should allow local units of government to choose from so that they can do what's best for their area. As we see with other bills that have been proposed, one-size-fits-all doesn't. It just doesn't.
The Illinois Municipal League last week released a proposal kind of counteracting Governor Pritzker's build initiative, and it kind of reflects a little bit or parallels some of the stuff you guys have talked about today. Is that something you guys would bring forward alongside them, work with them on at all?
Go ahead.
All I was going to say was I saw that. I haven't had time to read through it and see exactly what it says yet. Assuming, you know, it's based on a lot of what we're proposing, I would think we could find some common ground. But without having had time to digest it yet and fully understand what it says, it's hard to state. But I was happy to see it. I think there are other ways to promote growth within Illinois other than the governor's build plan, and hopefully we'll look at all of them.
So on the build program too, you know, I first, and I've tried to be genuine in this, I want to applaud the governor for trying to do something that addresses building codes, right? We have, in this state, established a tyranny of the building code in so many ways. And we have forced small mom and pop homeowners, small business owners to forego opportunities because the code to comply with is so onerous. I've been talking with many business owners lately and talked about if we had a way, instead of needing immediate implementation for a code, what if we had an agreement, as long as life safety wasn't involved, with local businesses where we could put code compliance, code requirements for an outdated structure into place over a 5-year schedule. And we had an agreement with the city that we were going to do this, and we were going to step it up. We get a business owner that gets to start running their business and having cash flow in to be able to pay for those upgrades. We get a tax revenue operation at the local level that's able to help with those local tax situations, jobs, and place for families to go. We also have an opportunity to say in Illinois, we're going to do what's right. Because if we don't do this, if we don't accommodate the business, then we have an outdated, non-compliant building that's going to sit there until somebody comes in with a ton of money to be able to upgrade it. I had a situation where we had a historic house in one of the towns that I represent. They needed to tear out their second-story windows that were historic and original glass from the 1800s in order to comply with egress requirements. Now, come on. It's their house. It's their place. I understand the safety issue of a firefighter climbing in there, but where that line is between what a homeowner should determine they need to have versus code compliance is a big issue. So in some aspects, the build program, I think, is moving in the right direction. I think it's an overreach because I think instead of what it should do, where it offers local units of government a chance to modify and adapt code that is so strict right now they can't, instead it says, we know better and we're going to implement what's our thoughts on you. The same that we saw with the wind and solar project, removing that ability for counties to be able to regulate that. So build is kind of in the right direction from a we need to fix, but it is in the wrong direction of usurping local authority and making sure that the state governs all. We gotta stop this one size fits all. We gotta stop the top down. We need to restore flexibility to local units of government so that they can adapt to their community.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Is that your pen?